All right, so today we're going to be recording a video where we're going to be watching Flat's interview with Aaron Keller, the game director of Overwatch yesterday. And this is one of the rare moments where I record this off stream. So first of all, let me know what you think, because it's a little bit different than just like recording this live on stream. And let me know what you think about the interview, questions you saw the answers to. We're going to kind of react to it, give you everything, all the details, kind of give you my thoughts on all of the stuff in the interview. Let me know what you think. Yeah, so here we go. It's up to YouTube. All right, here we go.
That's good. All right, well, you know what? Let's just start off with the new season, with season 9. How is the team feeling right now with the game and the recent updates, the projectile changes? Do you feel like they accomplished their goals? Or
good question, because season 9 was a huge season.
So this is awesome. So we're pretty happy with season 9, and it's like for a couple of reasons. You know, like it feels like there was a big reaction from our community too. That they were all really excited to see a lot of these changes.
So I want to pause already because, one, I agree. I think season 9 has been one of the best Overwatch seasons so far. Obviously, it's okay if you disagree with that. I've personally enjoyed it, and this is coming from a tank player where tank has kind of ran into these consistent issues of, you know, all of that. But it is funny hearing that everybody was excited, because I remember initially, remember when they announced the passive, like, wait, what? The passive ended up being a good quality of life change for Overwatch, but it didn't really have a huge impact. I've actually enjoyed the projectile changes that they've added to the game. It feels like it adds a little bit more of that dynamic of being able to hit your shots, which is nice, but it also, I don't know, it's been a cool season for me personally. Obviously, there's been things they can improve on, but I've always kind of explained it as it's a really good blueprint that they now have. Obviously, deeper into Overwatch 2, it's been over a year, almost a year and a half now. A much better blueprint than before, and now they can build off of that and hopefully kind of go in the right direction with it.
And I think you're right. It's in like 2 different areas. So like one, there was changes to competitive, and then there was changes to the core gameplay. And we can probably, I think there's going to be a theme here that comes up a few times over this conversation. And I'll just kind of like start it now where,
okay.
Over like the course of Overwatch's history, you know, even from like 2016, there weren't a lot of times where we made big changes to the core game, like the actual core gameplay, right? Or to a system that really affects it. And I think that like, I kind of put it at 3, and one of them almost doesn't count because it was the original competitive system, and that was released like a month after Overwatch launched, right? And then after that, we had Roll Queue, you know, in July of 2019. And then when Overwatch 2 launched, and we switched to the 5v5 format. You know what? I'm just gonna like keep going. Sorry, that like kind of bumped me. But so we switched to the 5v5 format, and those were like the moments where the game had like really big changes to it. And other than that, like we would always like release new heroes. We'd release new maps and fun events, but I don't think the release of content a lot of times has the same sort of effect or the same change on a game that some of the changes are that we did in season 9, changing competitive, changing core gameplay. Great. And so like,
just to talk about that very quickly too, like the changes to core gameplay is such an important part for Overwatch, because if you kind of keep the game in that same spot, which there's going to be kind of arguments back and forth on that of like whether or not they should, etc. I think the season 9 changes were like a positive direction for that, where they're willing to make changes to the game and not let it feel too stale, which is always good, because as Aaron was saying, like, yeah, they can release these events, but usually people will log on, play the events for a day, and then usually it will kind of, you know, they'll probably have, I don't know the exact numbers, but usually people start to go back to what they were playing before. So when you do core gameplay changes, it adds a little bit more of a dynamic to their seasons. And I don't expect the core gameplay change every season, but I like that they're looking into ideas to improve the game rather than kind of just keep it exactly as is.
For us, like, I think that we're excited to have like done this, and then this is kind of the way we're looking at the game, you know, going forward, is like, what are some of the other things that we could be doing? What are some of the other changes that we could be making?
Which is good.
And so it's like, one, it could be more changes to the competitive system, you know.
There can be still.
But also it's like, it's the cadence that we do some of this stuff. I talked about it a little bit on the developer update. But when we did this internally, we were talking about this thing, like we internally called it the PvP refresh, right? Like, here's a moment where we're going to like do a lot of work to the game, and we thought we would do it annually. Like, hey, here's this annual cadence. We're gonna make a lot of changes like this to the game. And I think that now that it's launched, we're in this spot where we think that might not be enough.
Yeah.
You know, like it's probably not enough to do this on.
Wait, so just so I understand that correctly, is Aaron saying that they feel like only doing like major changes to the game once a year? So that's very interesting here because it sounded like they wanted to do like a yearly reset on stuff, but now it's kind of like, wait a second, they're now talking about the idea of doing more of these, which could be great. It's one of those things where like we have to wait and see. So it's like I'm optimistic about hearing that. I also have to kind of see. They could be like, no, we're going to give tanks 200 HP, and it's a different story, right? Kind of feels like you have that right now, but that's really cool to like kind of hear that and see where they're going. Another example is like they kind of talked about how they want to do like these yearly, emerald weapons and then change it to something else. But I also think that might be too far between each year to do that. I think there should be a little bit more variety of that. I don't know how the turnaround is on like the how long it takes to get that going, but it sounds like maybe their initial idea of like we do this once a year has kind of shifted. Like, wait, we like this. This is good. We see how the general positive response to this. What if we can do more of this? And hopefully in a way that makes the game enjoyable for everybody. But it's cool to hear that because they've already kind of shifted philosophies a little bit. It sounds like. Obviously, we can listen to more of the interview, see if that. But yeah, it's cool to hear that.
An annual basis. I don't think we ought to do it on a seasonal basis.
I agree. I don't think, yeah. Seasonal, no.
Crazy. So we're now talking about like, okay, what are the different like really big beats that we could have to the core game over the course of the year, and like how do we differentiate those from each other? And it could be that like, hey, maybe there's like 2 sets of placements every year, and each one of those, there's going to be a set of changes to the game that come along with it that also kind of like reinforce and validate that that's coming. And so we're kind of like we're working through all of that right now as fast as we can, because we're really hoping that like in my head we're hoping that there's some sort of like mid-year beat that we're doing as well.
Yeah,
that went like pretty sideways from the original question.
Yeah, I do like the idea of what he said though, like a mid-year beat. So like you have your early season, beginning of the year, like major change, and then you have your mid-year major change, and then you have like this rotation of like the game can feel fresh even more so than it has been, which I think is really cool. I mean, granted, how much can you keep doing that, right? Because then it comes to a point where you keep changing it a ton. But if it's positive changes to the game and they can keep building off this blueprint, then I don't have a problem with that. I mean, as a streamer, that sounds great. Obviously, YouTuber, like, I love new stuff. So when I hear that, I'm like, yes! Because obviously Overwatch 1 and Overwatch 2 is a lot different with how they've done content, releases, changed stuff. So it's, like I said, optimistic hearing that stuff, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, it's funny is that I have like some like questions that are similar almost along those lines where we were talking about. I'm jumping ahead slightly a bit, and just my own personal opinion. I asked chat a couple days ago because I agree with you. I think seasonal is just you're like out of the question. Like let's not get crazy.
You can't do seasonal major games.
Semi-annually, I think learned a lot from like the launch of Overwatch 2, right? Like I would say the launch of Overwatch 2, like there was a lot of hype for about 3-ish months, and then it kind of started to feel like old Overwatch in a lot of ways. And even with the patch that's just come out now, the game feels very fresh. Now, granted, you can talk about numbers, talk about certain characters, whatever. But like it's been a nice refresh again. And so like I know that it's out of the question to say like more than maybe 2 or 3 times a year. But I'm glad that you guys are looking at that, because at least for me personally, from my own experience, I wasn't even like playing ranked anymore. Like it was just kind of like there was no point. It felt like it kind of already sit there. Like I don't have pro aspirations. I'm not trying to do anything like that. I know I'm not good enough, and so there wasn't anything for me to do. But the changes really brought life to it. So I like that you guys are looking at that.
Cool. I
just to quickly talk about Flat's point right there too, is that like a lot of hype was around Overwatch 2 at the release, but one of the problems that I've talked about on stream a little bit is it was a little bit bare bones in the sense that like there was stuff there, but there wasn't like a lot of depth to it. So after the huge hype of it, it was like, okay, what's next? And they didn't have that quite ready, and that's why I think Season 9 is kind of where we've seen this really huge uptick of Overwatch, because the things that we really wanted have started to come into play in Season 9, as well as major changes that were unexpected. And it's been really nice to have that. I know DPS players are probably a bit happier too, because like it's always been like this back and forth in Overwatch where like you've had to play stack tanks, and then you had to Then you had the really OP tanks at the beginning. Then you had the really OP supports. Now DPS is also thriving a lot more now. And it's been a very interesting shift in all that. So that's why I've been like very optimistic with Season 9 is that, yeah, while there's some issues and there's some things they can definitely improve on, fix, I go back to what I said earlier. I love the blueprint that it's going with now, and I'm really curious to see where it goes.
I love that. I was gonna make like another point like in the middle of that, but I think I might have just,
I do that all the time, Aaron. Don't worry.
A bit. But I think okay, so here's what it is actually. So like you mentioned, like, hey, maybe this could happen multiple times a year. I think when you look at Overwatch also and you compare it to other games, like there's obviously a lot of differences that we can talk about and a lot of things that I think Overwatch does so well. But when we built the game, it was almost like an exercise in like how much can you take out of a game? You know, like it doesn't have a lot of the systems that other games have. There's like no like in-game like shop or something like that. There's no progression over the course of a match. There's not like we did like when we were developing Overwatch.
Just to summarize what he means by in-game shop, he's not referencing like the actual shop where you get skins. It's referencing like in a game like League, for example, when you have to like upgrade your items. I think if I'm correct, Paladins has like a card system. Other games probably have other systems I may not know of, but basically what he's saying is you don't have that like, you're not going into a game and upgrading your heroes to be like something stronger, and other games sometimes have that. So I think that's what he's referencing there, just to kind of point that out.
Watch, like we did experiment with a talent system for our heroes and removed that because we thought it kind of got in the way of just like knowing what different heroes could do.
Yeah.
I still would have liked him in some form, but
necessarily have a lot of the knobs that some other games do to help keep the game fresh, right? Like you could imagine if we did have a system like that, just changing some of those on a seasonal basis, along with doing balance changes.
You just change talent trees.
Has like a much bigger impact.
Kind of like MMOs, like wow.
So like I think we look at that and we've kind of realized that like I've talked a little bit about like just releasing content isn't enough. And a lot of times just doing balance changes isn't enough. And it's like, I don't think we can make enough big balance changes often enough to where it's going to totally solve that problem for us. So yeah, I think you're right. We have to find other ways of doing it. And like potentially there's other systems that do give us knobs, you know. I
do want to point out it's really good to hear that they're saying like, we don't think just giving you a limited time event every single season, like what they're saying is like, you don't go, okay, here's your new season, here's your limited time event, here's your mid-season balance, I'll see you next season. And I think that is very important that they're recognizing we need to do major changes. We need to stack our seasons. We can't just do limited time event, mid-season balance patch, new season, right? And that's good to hear because that is something that Overwatch needs, that they want to keep people, you know, continuing to play the game throughout a season. I mean, every game will have that little like slight drop off towards the end of a season while you wait for a new season. But if you want, like the limited time events usually are good for the first couple hours. Obviously, I'm not saying that everybody doesn't enjoy them for a long period of time. There are people who love it, enjoy it. I've actually heard recent good things about the newer event. But overall, what they're saying is, oh, hi, Sully, is what they're saying is that like they know that they need to do more than that to be able to keep that player retention and be able to do that stuff, which is a good thing to hear in the sense that like they recognize that the way they were doing it isn't quite where they want to go with it, and they keep on improving on that. So, and hi, buddy. I'm going to say hi. Come here, bud. Come here, buddy. Come here. You want to come in? Okay, there you go. All right, here we go.
Starting to open up to possibilities like that.
Yeah. I do want to say really quick because I'm gonna put a lot of that balance stuff towards the back because I have as you know, I probably have a lot to say about that,
Reinhardt.
But the thing is though, I want to commend you really quickly about
how many times is Flat's gonna ask buff Ryan
because
ask to buff Ryan.
The thing that was gonna destroy the game the most, that the 5-second passive. Ended up being fine. Like, you know, things like that, swinging the bat and like actually just going out there and just trying stuff. Cause like,
so what Flats is referencing there for anybody who doesn't know is when they announced the passive, they announced it in a blog post, and that's all they announced for season 9. So imagine all these season 9 changes you've seen, and the only thing they really talked about in the blog post was the idea of 5-second passive. And the reaction to it immediately was like, wow, this is going to be broken. This is going to be over the top. This is going to be ridiculous. Like, I can't believe they're adding that. And now that you have it in the game, you go, oh, okay, it's nice to have. It isn't over the top unreal. You start to realize that you usually take more damage within that 5 seconds, and it takes a long time to heal up. It's nice to have. It is an OP. And I don't mind it in Overwatch now. Obviously, maybe you have different thoughts on how you feel about we're not talking about the DPS passive here. We're talking about the passive that heals everybody, the DPS and the tanks, after 5 seconds. I think it's a good thing to have. It doesn't feel like it's over the top. It doesn't feel like you're losing 1v1s to it because there's just you're not able to, you're basically waiting like 20, 25 seconds to get fully healed throughout that whole process. So it's been good to have, but I think Flats is referencing when the reaction to that was like, oh no! When in reality, it was a good addition, and it's been nice to have.
As a community, and like, I admit, like I fall into it too. If the clickbait of like, oh, everyone's gonna have healing. Oh, it's gonna be the worst thing ever. Right. No, like it actually in the end, like I'd say was a net positive all around. Things feel pretty good.
Yeah.
So I want to encourage you guys, keep swinging the bat, keep trying stuff, and keep getting after it.
We're kind of like in that era of takes. Everyone's got to have a take on the thing before it comes out. And when we talk about things internally, it's so different. Where it's more like, that sounds like a good idea, but we just have to play it first. Like, just get it in and let.
Come here, buddy. I was gonna get Sully. He's being a good boy. Come on, bud. Come here. Here. You want me to sit with you? I got you. I got you, buddy. You good boy. Good boy. Come on. Okay, bye. He's like, bye. All right, here we go.
Let us play it, and we'll actually see how it is.
Yeah.
So it's, like people can be reactionary to it, but I think they've come around.
Yeah, I agree. At
least you have. Yeah.
Yeah, I come around to it. So another change that got made with this season was the rank system, which we touched on a little bit. But how do you feel about the new rank system? Is it accomplishing its goals that were set, or are there any issues that are still being dealt with that you want to look into?
But it still needs a little bit of stuff.
Yeah, so I think that we're like the TLDR is that we're happy, with the rank system. We're happy with the launch that we just did, and we think it accomplished a lot of our goals. And the biggest goal that we had for this update or this rework was just so that players could understand what was happening, because we got a lot of feedback like that. And I think sometimes...
Yeah, let me know how many times you see the expected in the comments.
The system.
You've made it to this part in the video. How often do you see expected?
In rank or like losing rank is you start like... You kind of start like extrapolating that on a lot of the rest of the game. You're not really able to tell yourself the real story of a match. And so sometimes it's not like, well, the reason I lost is because it's matchmaking's fault this time, just because like you just don't really know what's
we can still blame that, right?
Like we're hoping that people just have like a much better idea of what's happening behind the scenes right now. And we think that there's more that we can do with that too, so I know like players, they've asked us to bring back showing like individual rankings on the versus screen,
I like that.
And we've actually talked about that a bit. In season 10, we're going to be removing the grouping restrictions. So in competitive, right? And it's a pretty big change.
It's a huge change.
But I think we have a lot of safeguards in place to like keep match quality really high. And I think for the vast majority of people, like match quality is actually going to go up because we're now going.
Aaron might touch on this, but just to give you a summary of what the new season 10 like grouping restriction is in reference to, they're doing something called like wide matchmaking or whatever they're calling it. And basically what it means is that you can play with, say you're in top 500 right now and you want to play with your bronze friend, you can play with your bronze friend. But the way it works is it only looks for people who are doing the exact same thing. So what I think Aaron's alluding to now is because one of the major issues people run into is, let's say you're solo queuing or duo queuing, you go up against a 5-stack. The game can't take into account that the 5-stack is going to be much better just because of probably even just the communication alone. This now allows for 5 stacks to go against each other. This allows for, you to be able to play with your friends, but you're not going to have to like go on a different account for that and all this stuff because obviously you don't want that because that can create a lot of different issues. And I'm sure some people will talk about that in the comments. So what this means is that they're coming up with a way for you to be able to play with your friends, but it's only going to look for people who are doing that, which might lead to longer queues, but it'll also lead to better games for people who like to play solo or duo, because now you won't have to worry about going against these like large stacks or going against these like wide range groups because they're kind of playing their own ranked against each other, which we'll see. There's probably going to be some issues and like kind of like growing pains with it, but I do think it could go in a very good positive direction for ranked. It's very much a wait and see because I don't even know what to expect because this is something that's completely new. And when you hear that, you're like, whoa, what's going to happen? But I definitely want to hear more about the systems and see where that goes.
To have like two different, like pools of players, and one of them is going to be like the narrow group, and the other one is kind of be like the wide group, where people are getting into parties that have like pretty disparate skill differences. But for that narrow group, we're suddenly going to be able to like pretty quickly be able to put together like really close matches. And we think, at least for that set of people, it's probably a lot safer for us to start showing individual rankings in there. We're a little worried about it for the wide ones,
Well, they're worried about it for the wide range because
of the focus it can put on certain players.
Because if you have like a top 500 enter bronze,
So like, it's not quite everything that players want there. I know, like we still feel like we have like a duty to protect people sometimes, but to try to put as much information still in the game as we can. It's
all about creating the blueprint for it too.
I would say,
so,
from my perspective, and like I see a lot of the community as well, just like there's certain things that they hurt, right? Like getting like the volatile, you would get the volatile and you lose like 40 points. It's like, like you start losing your mind. I think like people like those types of ones, they hit so hard that like maybe some type of more information or like something that could kind of explain like, hey, you're getting hit with this because this reason.
Okay, so I do want to pause this for a second, and I actually think this might have to do a little bit with the UI update on it. So what I mean by that is sometimes like it when you lose the 40% or it goes volatile, you probably lost that prior. But I think what happens is because they added the rank protection and then the way that it updates, you lose a lot more. So and this is my basic understanding of how I think it works. I don't know if this is exactly how it works, but basically when you get that rank protection, it doesn't put it to 0%, right? Like it doesn't like, if you get rank protected, which is where like it will say like rank, like you aren't like going to lose your rank, it still has you at like 83% in the previous rank. You get what I'm saying? So if you lose 2 in a row, when you hit that rank protection, you're already going to be at like 65% in the previous rank that you're going to be at, right? The rank that you would fall to. But the problem is that you don't, like when you think rank protection, you think it's going to lock you at 0%, you can't derank, and now if you win, you get 20% back. But I think what it does is it pulls you into and that's how like you'll win a game and you'll get 1%, because you're going from 84% into the previous rank to 1% into the new rank, so it looks like you get 1%, when in reality, the system, that's where I think it's a little bit scuffed, and that needs to be cleaned up a little bit so you can understand why you're losing that much rank, or just make it a straight up rank protection, and then you start at 0%. That's kind of what's happened, and I think that's why it's giving you kind of that response.
Reason, it's not just like you lost, 2 or 3 games. It's like, well, I think it's now it's like you have the demotion protection, and then you lose the demotion protection. It counts that game as well. So like,
yes,
the volatile is like the demotion protection game plus the one you just lost, and that's why it hits so hard. Maybe something that kind of like, show them that that's what it is, or just like just knowing like, who's I playing against? Was I playing like against a group of 5 people?
I want to point something out, by the way, and I think it's really cool here, and this is something that when Aaron mentions feedback, he means it. Aaron right now is writing this stuff down to make sure that this is stuff that's being brought up into like meetings or brought into like concerns for ranked, etc. And to have that, you're seeing it live happen. Aaron's always kind of been kind of huge on that feedback type of stuff. So, that's why they always say just keep letting them know whether it's how you feel about everything. So
people, like maybe that's why they were favored to win, because
like
they
were
a group. Too. You know what I mean? So, but I agree though. I think the rank system is much better than where it was, and I think it's given a lot of people competitive drive again. So
yes, absolutely has.
I'm sorry, I'm taking some notes now.
Oh, that's funny as I say that.
Like looking down.
You can see him writing down too.
That's great, and you kind of like saw through some of that demotion protection, So yeah, we should probably talk about that more.
Yeah,
they just need to make it so it's obvious.
You guys are always looking at this kind of stuff, though. Seriously, it means a lot. I think a lot of people appreciate that.
Yep.
Cool.
Next one up. I gotta ask this one because this is just the bane of my existence at this point. But at the end of the dev video the other day, there was a small hint to like a streamer mode at the end. Is there anything you can share about that? Because
it'd be nice to have like a legit one.
Personally, the current streamer mode doesn't. It just protects me from myself, and I don't need a protection from myself.
To give you an idea, just so you know, the current streamer mode in the game is client side, so it only hides your name from yourself. It doesn't, like, if I say I get into a game and you're like, okay, I just want to, not have people run at you 1v5 and spawn. as like a streamer, or if you play against other people like consistently, you hide your name from yourself. They can still see your name. One positive, I do like that it can kind of like, if like somebody has like a dumb name or something, you can like use like the button to like, you could, it's good for that. But outside of that, the streamer mode is basically just there as like a, hey, if you want to hide your name from yourself, there you go.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah, well, no.
Yeah. So we actually have a whole nother dev update that's going to be coming soon to talk about that more. But yeah, we are going to be adding to the streamer mode, and I think it's probably going to get to what most people want, which is like real server side anonymity.
There we go. Server side. That's what we were hoping for.
And
that's the key terminology there.
I was gonna say, like, I don't need to go into a lot of details of it here, but because I don't want to like take away too much from that next video. But yeah, something's coming. We'll go into a lot of detail with it.
Sounds good to me.
I don't know exactly when that video's airing, in a few weeks or something.
Spoiler alert, I know somebody who's in it because he mentioned it in the chat. Gavin, aka Winter, was like, I heard there's some great people on there.
I was just going to try to start asking if I could get you to
there was some great people on there in the Twitch chat the other day. So.
And just let the chaos happen. You're like,
no,
you're like, I will show them.
I had to make a separate BattleNet account for me to like ever play with people publicly, so it's like, so I don't have to worry about it. So like it shows that we need the system to be better than what it is right now. Not everybody gets to like, email BattleNet and get that extra account set up.
Yeah, true. No, yeah, you're not wrong. But I just want to say thank you for that, because I know there's a lot of other creators that have been talking about this for years now. So like, it means a lot. You guys are bringing this finally forward.
I've absolutely been bringing that up.
It gives me a lot of hope. It's like things that we need or been asking for are coming out, and appreciate that a ton. Next one. Is there any more details that can be shared about how past mythics can be earned? In the video on Tuesday, it mentioned that they'd be available in the shop or able to earn, but there wasn't any specifics. Is it maybe how it was shown at BlizzCon, where you can like trade in the current season's mythic once you've earned it for an old one?
Not quite that.
The prism system that we heard a little bit about.
The way it's going to work is you're going to like, as you like progress through the premium battle pass, you're going to earn like a new currency. It's called Mythic Prisms.
Yep.
And you're just going to be able to use those to unlock past Mythic skins. And the cool thing is like for the like over the course of that battle pass, you'll be able to earn enough of the Mythic Prisms to be able to buy and like fully upgrade at least one Mythic skin.
Slight question on this is, if you decide you want to just get the base Mythic skin, can you get 2 Mythic skins in a season? My guess is no, but I'm curious to see those numbers because they haven't shown how much currency is for the upgrades, etc. People would love that, but then I'm just curious on how that one is.
In there. Mm-hmm. And what's cool about this is like the reason we're excited about this, and it's kind of what makes a lot of our job hard with Overwatch, is not everybody's excited about every hero. Not everybody's, and even if you are excited for a particular hero, it doesn't mean you're necessarily going to be excited about every skin we make for that hero, So it's like the things that...
One side note to this, I really think there should be, and I don't know if they'll ever do this for a season, but having a season where they kind of go through and add a few more upgrades for every Mythic skin. So like you can take, for example, the last Mythic skin was good. I like the customization, but then you had like, I think it was the Hanzo and the Orisa skin that just didn't have much customization. So I'd like for them to kind of go through there and add more customizations to these Mythic skins that could really benefit from that and really make them much more appealing for people to get. Even if they look cool, people also love the customization aspect of it. I think the Mortar skin started to hit a lot more on that, and I think a lot of people are still kind of looking for like that like Genji, Kiriko style Mythic skin we saw at the beginning of Overwatch, where you had a lot more customization. So
we try to put in front of players is like, hey, look at how amazing this is. Like, we believe it's amazing. I think a lot of people can probably look at it and be like, oh, that's really cool, but like I don't play Moira. I don't even play support, Yeah,
which is fair.
Like, why do I need that?
Yep.
And so this is gonna like hopefully like open it up more to where people can look at some of the other awesome things we've made and going like, oh, I can finally get that thing that I've always wanted.
Yep.
That choice.
Which makes sense. It should be that way.
Yeah, it's that choice that's there. And then I think maybe like a few more details there is so it's like you'll be able to get the base level of a mythic skin and then get some upgrades for it. And the nice thing is like there's some choice there also to where you don't have to fully upgrade a mythic skin if you don't want to.
So you can save your mythic prisms.
You can just get it to the point where you got what you wanted out of it, and then you can take some of your mythic prisms and spend them on either another skin or upgrades for another skin.
Basically, if you like one specific one, you can just do that one and then keep those for others.
Off the top of my head, do some mythics have more options than others?
Yes.
So like, would those ones be like harder to complete at that point? I'm not.
They're pretty similar.
Okay.
Hanzo had a few less than some of our other mythic skins. Yeah. So there's at least one that's a little bit easier. That would be a little bit easier.
And I think Arissa didn't have as much customization.
I'm actually going to jump ahead really, really quick because I think it's relevant to ask now.
Okay, I'm ready.
Ooh, okay.
Let me see. I just want to make sure I have this worded correctly.
I'm excited.
Hey, by the way, I really like the light streaming in on you there.
Oh, thank you.
The blinds. It's like a very artsy look.
Yeah, everyone's come in and go that like I like the new striped shirt, and I'm like,
yeah, I'm sure Flats went for that. By the way,
now the sun's kind of faded, so it doesn't make as much sense. But when I first started, it was just like my whole face, and it's just like, guys.
Yeah, I'm sure that's what he was aiming for.
I know we don't see the sun very often, but this is what sunlight looks like. Please. Okay, so I just want to jump ahead really, really quick because I think it's also relevant. Is there any plans or potential openness to giving mythic tier to other cosmetics other than skins, such as highlight intros, emotes, etc.?
That'd be kind of cool.
Ooh,
mythic weapon skins, mythic.
What can I say about this? You know what? I guess I'm just not going to say no.
Okay. So yeah, they plan on doing other mythic variations.
There's some serious potential
I like that.
there, and
I think adding more like ways to customize your character is always going to be good.
Shout out.
That's how I've seen
the chat for that one. All right, let's get a little bit in the nitty gritty. All right, I want to start off with this one. How do you feel about tanking in Overwatch 2?
Oh, here we go. I'm ready. This is where Flats will ask for Reinhardt buffs too.
Here we go. Right. Like generally, like what we want for a tank is for them to feel impactful, right? In a match. Like, so we are definitely keeping an eye on that because like as you raise the power level of different heroes, it's just gonna, or especially of different roles, like
especially DPS
this season, it could feel like it takes away some of that. I think that we had an issue when we first launched that it felt like tanks were almost just too squishy. And there's like two parts of that. One, it's the DPS passive, and two, it's like the style of the game has changed a little bit.
Yes.
And so both of those on top of each other of kind of like players adapting and there being like a pretty impactful change is going to like hit a tank there. So like we're kind of like keeping an eye on this, and we think that there's a decent amount of it that has to do with that DPS passive, and we can talk about that if you want to, and we talk about like damage heroes and stuff. But
yeah,
like maybe there has to be a
tank needs.
We try to keep things simple, but maybe there has to be some sort of difference in that DPS passive for tanks and for other characters.
Yeah.
You know?
Which isn't a bad idea.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
No.
Given tanks like multiple CC reductions, you gotta add it to one thing.
Yeah.
Okay. I agree with you. I think that the toning it down from 20 to 15 probably made a big difference. Other than that Malgo week which was very interesting. It's still early, and I want to emphasize that it really does feel like we're kind of playing Overwatch 3.0 at this point, right? There needed to be some major adjustments. The tank role especially felt major adjustments. Me and Karki went on like the biggest losing streak of all time. Like he touched diamond, I got goddamn close. But then that same week climbed back up to like top 30, right? So like the swing was insanely large. But that being said, though, it feels like there's an immense amount of pressure on the role to perform, almost more so than the other two roles.
Well, I do want to add to that though. I feel like the tank having even more pressure now is also putting more pressure on supports because tanks are struggling. And because of that, supports are like, I had it a few times where I off-rolled a little bit, and I could just tell, like, if your tank does not want to hide behind a wall for more than, like, 3 seconds, you just fall behind, and you just feel like you can't do anything but sit there and spam heal the tank. And it's not even like that's necessarily a bad thing, but like I'll get through like a whole Ana clip and hit every shot and I'm still falling behind. So like I think even the tank rolls out added even that extra pressure to supports.
With DPS and support. And I watched 2's about like 2 weeks ago, got onto Overwatch and was like, oh, I heard there was a new update, and I just happened to be still awake on Twitch, and I was hanging out with Karki, and I was watching him, and I was like, damn, like, yeah, his positioning and his game sense is kind of terrible, but his aim's insane. Like, it looks he just hits every head.
Really good
it's crazy.
aim, yeah.
But it looks like he's just like, this is the most like relaxing experience I've ever witnessed. And Kark's like, what do you mean? And I was like, dude, this looks like an enjoyable, like easy, he's just having a good time in like a high masters game.
Because you're watching a DPS game.
Karki says to me, he goes, what do you mean? This is what my POV looks like. And I was like, mine doesn't look like
tank
that.
Doesn't
mine
look like
I'm
that.
in the trenches, like, fighting for my damn life. And if I make one small mistake, game's over.
Right?
Yeah, so like my big concerns are that where it feels like there's an insane amount of pressure to perform to have that impact, to the point where it's almost what's the word I want to use here? I don't want to say like maybe irrational, but it's like it's the amount of skill that is required and time that is required to put into it seems so much higher than the other roles, because it's not always mechanical. It's much more like game sense, engaging, stuff like that. But the other side of that I'm also concerned about is it seems with a lot of tank metas that we've been getting, other than the first half of the season, it just ends up being whatever is the hardest sustain character, and it ends up being mostly like Orisa, Sigma, Mauga, right? And most of the time you pick those characters because you stand there and try not to die and just exist as long as you can and get good value. My concern would be like, is it all like I don't really want always the number characters to be the strongest, and obviously in the tank role you have to play what's meta. If you don't play what's the strongest, you're gonna get yelled at, you're gonna get screamed at, somebody's gonna be screaming tank diff in the middle of the game. You kind of just have to go with it. So
just to pause at that point for a second, it's gonna happen even if you don't play the medic tank. Like even if they don't even know, like even if like there's no meta tank, that's still gonna happen. Like tank's one of those things where I don't think of a good way to explain it. The tank, you as a tank understand that you can't take a lot of damage because of current Overwatch, but like your teammates will also think that you're like a stone wall, like a metal wall that's like you can't do anything to. When in reality, you can't actually do much as tank because you just take so much damage, and you have to play like this hide and seek like prop hunt meta sometimes. It doesn't mean that's all the time, right? Obviously, there'll be a little bit of over exaggeration to that. Like you get value as tank, but like it's so like I think Flats brings up a good point with it, where it just takes so much to get that value that if you even remotely, say I want to go for a little extra like a shot on somebody to the right, and you even remotely show like half your hitbox, you now are back down to 20% HP and you're hiding, waiting for the DPS passes to fall off, waiting for your supports to be on you. If your supports aren't on you, you still have to wait longer, and then you just don't do anything. So it's like this rinse and repeat of like hide and seek, right? Hide and seek, prop hunt, doing a little bit of damage, rinse and repeat. And then if you don't go and play aggressive that whole time, your teammates are like, what are you doing? But then if you do play too aggressive, teammates are like, what are you doing? So you just, it's a really difficult spot for tank in that sense. So it doesn't mean tank's inherently bad. It just means there's just a lot you have to do to get that value. And while the value you get as a tank can be super satisfying when you do get it, it's just this season has been a little bit less of that. Keep in mind, I still love tanking. I love playing it. But there definitely obviously has been that issue. And I imagine they'll look at ways to address that.
I know that's a lot, and I know that, there's not really probably a good answer to a lot of that. But I just wanted to at least give my feedback to what you were saying about tanking.
It's actually really good. And like I think it accurately describes the way like some people feel about it, and I think there's probably more of this at higher ranks than there are at other ranks, because there's a little bit more flexibility of picking off meta.
You can pretty much play anything in most ranks, which is usually my feedback when people ask about where they should go.
I'm not saying this isn't a justification for it. It makes me think of that, the Spider-Man quote with great power comes great responsibility, where sometimes you feel that responsibility on your shoulders, as you're playing tank. And I play a decent amount of tank. I think I probably play more tank than other.
I've seen your Ryan. It's pretty good.
There you go. That was like, I'm not a great.
It was good. It was good. Player. It was very good.
I had great healers. That's what was going.
Oh, always passing off so humble, so humble.
But yeah, so I think that there's definitely something there, and it changes over time. You know, like the same way like support has definitely changed quite a bit, even just since Overwatch 2 has launched.
Oh yeah, beginning of Overwatch 2 was a struggle. Now it's a great role
on the field, and with us trying to give that one player the ability to kind of like still like take and hold space, it has gotten pushed that way. It's tough too, because like I don't want to go like too deep into some of this stuff. I think this is probably better to just go into it maybe like some other point, but like tank has been sort of like the biggest problem to solve in all of Overwatch's history.
Yeah, I was gonna say, even since Overwatch 1.
Just now.
Yeah.
You know, and so the like I talked about the three times we made changes, you know, to the way Overwatch was played. There was actually a fourth time before we launched Overwatch, and that's when we put in the hero limits. Because before that, you could have as many heroes
6 divas
that you or as many of any one heroes you wanted. You know, like
6 divas.
Yeah, and I remember
that's always the reference. Hanamura.
Yeah, so we had the internal tournament where we had like 5 Winstons and like a Zenyatta, and they won the whole thing. We called it the Quinston, and like we kind of always knew it was a problem, but that was like cemented it, you know, like that there's just an issue here with that, you know.
That's awesome.
It was actually pretty great. That was like our original executive producer won that tournament too with the Quinston strategy.
Oh shit, that's fucking so cool.
Stacking 5 Winstons and a Zen in an internal tournament. I love it.
We put in hero limits, and then, you know, later on we ended up putting role queue in. And the reason we put role queue in, I don't know if you remember this, but it's like you'd get into a match.
Hey, everybody go 4 DPS. Yeah, 4 DPS, 2 support.
That's how I became a tank player.
Same. Not
right?
Unironically.
Yeah. And you might.
That's how a lot of people became tank players.
And so like there was like all this social pressure on it to have somebody try to fulfill that role, because if you had some on the other team,
I mean, I found that I had to go support more often than not, because it was better to have a support than 5 and so like we 6 DPS.
Role queue, and it was crazy when we did it. Queue times went way up, and the reason they went way up is because people weren't playing tank.
Yep.
You know.
Yep.
Now we actually have a pretty decent ratio of the people playing tank to the amount of tanks that are available, like out on the battlefield. So
I do want to pause them in there too, because I don't know if they ever touched on that point when they went from 6v6 to 5v5. Is that the queue times were just not they were tough for a lot of roles, and one less tank made it easier for that. And I'm glad to hear that at least like the queue times have improved for people across the board. Keep in mind when you watch like a top 500 stream and you see me having long queues, etc., it's because like there's just because of the amount of players in there. Like I'll be like rank like 20 at the time. My queue times are going to be like 20, 30 minutes. That's because like there isn't many players in that range. It's a whole different story. Like that isn't. But I'm actually curious now, if you're this far into the video, what are your normal queue times in your rank? Because it can fluctuate, but like I imagine you probably are able to get games fairly quickly, which in Overwatch 1, it was a lot longer for a lot of queues when you had to wait on like the 2 tanks. So I'm actually curious now if that's like how everybody's feeling with that, because like I said, ignore the top 500 queues you see. It's a little bit different, a little bit more niche. So
it's like we've kind of like traded one problem for another is what it feels like, you know? And it's like the overall health, especially of like matchmaking and queue times, it's so much better than it used to be.
Which is great to hear.
There's more pressure on the tank players right now than there used to be.
Yeah. I'm glad you guys are obviously super aware of all that stuff, but I remember back in Overwatch 1, there was like all the DPS players always wanted to duo with tank players.
Yep. Because you get a game.
It was a wild time.
You know, it was crazy too. There was like this place on the skill curve where like it was like this weird intersection, and like somewhere in like the upper like the upper tiers of masters, where like like DPS, tank, and support were all queuing at the same rate. So if you were like there, you were like in like the promised land, you know?
You know, I wonder, and I don't know if this is like the actual, like how it actually went, but once you hit like that low GM, like 4,000 SR, it's changed since then, like GM5, the equivalent of GM5, you went from being able to play that Rein Zarya to like you had to play like Orisa Sigma, Roadhog Sigma, Wrecking Ball Sigma. There was no like Rein Zarya synergy anymore in top, like when you got to that point. So I wonder if that's like also that rank where like you had the tank duos queuing in like high masters and they would play Rein Zarya no matter what, and they were able to have fun there. But then if they climbed up that like low GM all the way up, then they'd have to play Orisa Sigma, and then they go back down to there and they could enjoy their Rein Zarya again at the time, because I didn't get to play that for a long time in there. So I wonder if like that also has something to do with it with tanks, because the synergy you had then was cool, like Winston Diva, but like as you climbed, it was impossible to get that in top 500 anymore.
High Masters was the promised land in Overwatch 1, and we didn't even know it.
Yep.
That's awesome. Okay, I don't want to go too much more on tank, because I think it's also affected by the other roles too. So we can jump into those and talk about it. But how does the team feel about DPS? And more
probably good.
The idea is my guess. Passive, and is it working as intended?
Yes, we actually talked about that passive a lot. And like, so like we're pretty happy with where DPS is and where it's moving. It does feel like
how do you feel as a DPS player?
More impact in a match, and
YouTube
especially
comments.
the type of impact they ought to have, which is like either securing or like really helping to secure kills on the back.
Which makes sense for DPS.
And a lot of that has to do with the passive.
Yeah.
Their old passive wasn't working. I think we all know that the like quicker reload on eliminations just wasn't really working.
Yep.
You know,
right.
Especially because
you have to get the elim.
like once you got that elimination, you might not even need it anymore.
Yeah.
And for some of our heroes, like didn't even do anything.
Poor Hanzo.
All, right?
Yeah.
Poor Hanzo. So yeah, we talked about a lot of different passes, and this is kind of like the one that we thought slotted into the game best, at least for now, especially because based off of where support was, you know, like support was having kind of like an outsized effect on a lot of the matches in Overwatch. And so this felt a bit like
support was really strong.
Kill two birds with one stone
Mm-hmm.
With this particular passive. And so we like it. I think it's the thing where it's like, as it continues to play out, we'll talk about whether the numbers need to change, whether we do potentially need to have like a special exception for tanks with it.
Just to talk about that too, the DPS passive does what it's supposed to do, especially in like the duels, right? When you're able to like 1v1 somebody, you're going against like a pocketed Soldier 76 or like a Mercy, right? Like you can win those duels now and you feel like you have that impact. And I think that was the intended version of the DPS passive. The problem is that a lot of players just shoot the tank. As you know, you've seen it in the spectating series we've done. You see it in your games. People just shoot the tank, which means that the tank will get the most impact, but then the tank will struggle, which is why I think they're looking into ideas to give tanks a little bit more protection against that, because the tanks just get rolled because they can't do anything. So the DPS passive has been good in the sense of the DPS versus DPS, the DPS versus support. It's been helpful there, but when it comes to the tank, it makes it really hard on the tank and really hard on the support. And probably a lot harder than they probably wanted it to be for the tank and support.
And we'll just keep going from there.
The tank synergy with the support.
I agree with all that. It was nice to let DPS be more impactful, and
I agree.
You know, you always saw the clips of the Dragon Blade not being able to cut through just regular healing. It was just like,
I still feel like it does that.
That's tough, buddy. You know, like nano blades.
Watching OWCS, just a Genji deflect.
Ridiculous.
I've seen that. Yep.
Yeah. So I like that. I agree. I think DPS having a more impactful role in the game is actually very healthy.
I agree.
When DPS is strong, it's just like, you know, some of those older tanks, and I'm gonna just say it,
Reinhardt,
at least in the higher level play, just feels not as good. Just because, like, you know, on Orisa, right? Like, if you're talking like the characters that have like good sustain, you know, you can still shoot and fight back.
Rein wins in a lot of ranks
while you're having your damage resist. But on Rein, like, you just stand there with your shield and you can't do. It's like you're either doing damage or you're standing there, right? And it's especially when with the DPS passive, it's picked up the speed of the game quite significantly, because like healing isn't as impactful, so it's more about getting out there and trying to go get those kills quickly. Especially when it was at 20%, when everyone was playing like the Junker Queen and trying to like run at them as fast as they can, which is, you know, honestly super exciting.
Yep.
But yeah, like on that tank side, you get poked out. Oh man, you just can't get back to full health.
Nope.
I I love that for the damage question. We're back to talking about Ryan here.
Yeah, I told you I was gonna find a way to bring them all back through it, and when we get to support, it's gonna be the same thing.
Okay, here we go.
So let's talk about support then. How does the team feel about support? Now, and is it better now than, let's say, what it was in pre-season 8? Where's it at?
I think it probably depends on who you're talking to, right? If you're talking to a support player, they might not agree that it's better. Like they have been taken down a bit of a notch. And the tough thing is like if you look back at like over like the past year and a half, is when Overwatch 2 launched,
support struggled.
Supports were in a tough spot.
Yep.
Sometimes like
so they focused on making support better.
In the back line, just kind of like a nut.
And just to point this out, it hasn't felt better for supports in season 8. But I think supports are probably in a much better spot than like if they went and nerfed a bunch of stuff. Like the supports are still going to be good, but you're definitely going to feel that impact of a little bit of a shift. They went from making support the strongest role to making support a good role that I think more of the issue will be trying to keep your tank up just because of that passive. So
annihilating them. Or like there was like that Sojourn moment, where it's like you just like Sojourn just gotta like just could just take them out at will, it felt like. And so I think that there was a lot of community conversation about it then also, just about like the state of support and how it could just feel oppressive to play support, which is interesting to think about, like all of the ways that like people that play a particular role can describe themselves and how it changes over time, which I think is healthy. It's probably not ever healthy to have people feel like playing their particular role is oppressive. But so we put a lot of work into like, okay, like how do we kind of like give them more survivability, and sometimes
they gave them more survivability.
Supports can actually like focus on each other and keep each other up,
Life here is a good example of adding that.
A little bit better at like 1v1 or duels or something like that, just so that like, hey, when that like Tracer or Genji is back there, they really have to like execute well to be able to take that character out. And I think what happened is we just pushed it too far.
Yeah, you just overtuned.
And so it's like we gave them like almost like just they were too good at being able to like
do everything,
keep themselves alive in some of those moments, or to where it's like, should it really be that like you have a 50-50 chance as like Genji or Tracer?
DPS should be able to win it a bit more of the time.
Your job is to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Even at the right moment, you like pick the right moment, you've played it right,
and then they burst heal.
You still might go down for it. So like, I think that wasn't really the right spot for it, and we've tried to like shift it, and we're really hoping that this kind of is another story with the DPS passive. We're hoping it's doing that. There's an adjustment for supports to go through there.
Yeah, I think if you listen really, really carefully, you might hear some TikTok comment out there saying skill issue. Just someone out there is gonna, you had the perfect blade, you waited all their cooldowns out, but they hit, 5.
First of all, Gavin said skill issue. This is Winter at Blizzard had said skill issue to Aaron at BlizzCon. So I love that he referenced skill issue.
Fuda papers, and you just got skill diff, dude. Unlucky. But that's actually super interesting. The way you're saying is like basically like survivability versus 1v1 ability versus impact. Like, support really is in a lot of ways like probably the most dynamic role in Overwatch, right? Like there's so many things that you have to do. And some of like the best players in Overwatch are support players. Like not like the base end of like everyone who plays like, just stand there and shoot your tank. I'm talking like top end, like the
best players. Well, they maximize min-max
like,
damage
skill
and healing.
Ceiling significantly always seems like higher.
Yeah, they're min-max.
And I think even the leaderboard sometimes reflects that, where they're like right now, I think there's more champ support players than anything else.
Yep.
And you could argue that's their impact. You could argue it's whatever, but I think the best support players are good at surviving. They're good at 1v1ing. They're good at having their impact. They're good with their cooldowns.
And game sense, like the amount of game sense needed is so high.
Yeah,
their timings are
game
great.
Sense is insane. Like, I was talking about 10's earlier. He's playing in High Masters, playing Cassidy, he's literally standing on low ground on like Ilios Lighthouse, like no height, nothing. He's literally just standing, like not next to in front of the tower in the middle. He's standing next to it in the open, just like click, 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 click. And it's like, okay, like I get it. You got that skill. I can't relate. But like, it just feels so much different. And so I like having, support shouldn't not be impactful. I might be regarded as a support hater, but I think a lot of people forgot that, back in the beginning of Overwatch, I was super advocating of like, hey, they need something like, you shouldn't be playing Dead by Daylight on support, right? And running around in circles. But, I think as you said, as the game's progressed, people learned how to play too in the 5v5 format.
With the game has changed.
You don't have that peeling tank all the time. You gotta learn how to fend for yourselves. So I would agree. I think support's in a much better place. I think there's a couple characters that probably don't feel great. I think like Mercy's a good example where depending on who you're talking to, she's either broken or the worst character in the game. And that obviously
DPS passive
isn't
makes
fun,
it a little bit more difficult
for them. So I feel for them on that. But I would agree with you. I think support's in a much, much better place. The only thing I would say, and I don't totally feel that way at the moment, but it can feel that way, is as a tank player, you sometimes feel like you're the puppet for your supports, and it depends on what they play or what they do, which is very different than traditional Overwatch for many years, where like your tank sets the tempo, your tank decides what the game is doing. Now it feels a little bit more like your supports decide the tempo of the game, where if they're dealing with a tracer in the back, if they're playing a different comp, like if they swap comp, right as you walk out of spawn and you didn't notice, oh wow, I gotta play the game completely different now, As emongg puts it, sometimes you're gonna play prop hunt, where like you peek out, shoot at somebody, then you run around the corner and don't move and hope they don't see you, because your supports are fighting somebody else.
That's amazing.
That definitely can hurt a little bit. But yeah,
it really is like prop hunt.
They're in a pretty good spot overall.
Yeah.
So
good summary of that.
Know. Okay. All right. This is another kind of a big one. And to be honest with you, I'm kind of leaning away from it. But like I'm mostly neutral on this. This is like a community question. I think that's been brought up and talked about. Is the idea of hero bans?
Oh yeah. Okay.
Oh, here you go.
So, what are your thoughts on hero bans? Feel free to be as open-ended or not open-ended as you'd wish. There's no just thoughts around it in general.
I'm ready.
Okay. So when we talk about like different systems for Overwatch, a lot of times we'll start with like goals, so like what are some of the goals we're trying to do, and what are some systems that could like get at some of those goals. And right now sometimes it feels like you can get these incredibly sort of like strong metas, where like there is like the right set of heroes to pick from, and like if everyone enjoys playing those heroes, it's okay, but it can stagnate, when something like that happens, and sometimes those heroes like last week with Malga, it can feel really tough, the game. And so like there's a version of hero bans that can address some of that, to where it's like the community now is like able to shift what some of like the heroes that are going to be played in a match are. I think that there's like something else to talk about with a system like this too. And there's a goal of potentially putting like another strategic element into Overwatch. And it wouldn't be strategic over the course, like inside of a match and like the moment to moment gameplay. It's not the same as like swapping to another hero, but there's some strategy that you can use before a match. And I talked about it a little bit earlier that there's not, we don't kind of have the same systems that some other games do that does bring additional layers of strategy to Overwatch. And so like, I think a hero ban system can provide both of those, and it's not that, so we don't have plans right now to like make a hero ban system. It's something that we're just talking about internally, and when we talk about it, like we kind of frame it like that. And more than likely, if we
just to summarize that, basically saying they talk about it internally as like, are these options, right? That's what they do. They talk about it internally as like, is this an option? But they haven't started working on it. It's what it sounds like. And just to give like my little thoughts on here, but I don't think the game's at that point yet. I think it's a really good discussion to have. And I don't know. I think they'd have to have more systems in place too. Like, let's say you load into a game and you know exactly that this person plays this hero, and you just automatically ban that hero. That kind of takes away. I mean, I don't know. There's a whole discussion to it. I think it's like, I'm still kind of on the fence of like, I don't think the game's ready for it yet. At the same time, if I'm wrong on that and they do bring it in, it ends up being great. I have no problem being like, you know what, they were right. I'm all for that too. Like, it just, I need to see. I don't think they'll do it anytime soon. I know it's definitely it's a very debated topic because I think there's arguments on both sides of it, and it's just like, I don't know. I don't know how it would work. I don't know. The previous time they tried it, it was a little bit scuffed because it was just based off of like, you could like kind of heck with the system a little bit by just like automatically picking heroes, and then it would just get banned just because of like pick rates. So it'd have to be a way different system. It'd have to be like a ban at the beginning. How much more does it add to the game timer? You know, are you able to know who you're playing against at the time when you make those bans? Are you making the bans based off of the map? Are you making the bans because you just know? Like, if you load into a Circuit Royale, this is before they, update Circuit Royale. Are you always going to just ban Widow Hanzo guaranteed? So then Widow players never be able to play that map, etc. There's so many variations. That's why it's like such a deep discussion. I think that's going to be for a different video if we ever get to that point. I think I'd rather go into a deep dive discussion on that, which I think would be fun if we ever get to the point of hero bans.
If we were to introduce one, it'd probably be a fairly like. We'd probably start in a safer place. It's interesting. I don't know if you saw Jake started a thread yesterday on Twitter.
I think I saw it.
Hero bans. Isn't what?
I think I saw it. Yeah.
Okay, I only saw the start because I'm actually not on the platform that often. I'm not like a huge social media guy. And he kind of pitched one in there, and I'm like, oh, that's like pretty good. And
follow my Twitter.
I missed the notification later. I didn't read it where he's like, oh, my whole system's like falling apart based off of what somebody said. So I'll have to go back in there and look at why he thought that. But I think it could provide some of that strategic element that Overwatch is missing right now, and I think it could help the community have a little bit more agency over what the meta is at any point.
Yeah, agreed. I think there's a lot to it.
Why are you not a fan of it?
I think there's a few things. One is hero bans are, I think, something that could be necessary if there was more characters in the cast.
Yep.
I don't think there's enough options. So, like, for example, if you queue in as a Pharah player, you're like a really good Pharah player, you're probably not able to ban a whole lot of the hit scans to like stop that, but you could ban D.Va. And D.Va's really good, like one of the best tanks, if not the best tank of dealing with good Pharah players in like ranked play, right? And if you take away that tool, what do you got next, right? Like, you don't really have a whole lot of other things in your kit.
Yep.
Expanding on that, like things like without the, streamer mode, which would cause actually probably, in my opinion, every player to use streamer mode, especially in high rank play. Most players know each other.
You have to have a better system at the beginning.
A junk one trick or a mercy one trick, whatever. You're going to target that person and take away their best character and remove what would consider, I guess, be one tricking, or at least what's close to it, right? Like, and like, let's say not even a one trick. Let's say like if we're referring like old Overwatch terms, like main tank players, right? Which was always like Orisa, Ryan, Winston, like that was their kit.
And you remove one of those.
If you played Numbani and you take away Winston, well, now they have to play D.Va, and they're not nearly as good on D.Va.
You could just force
so like,
other
that
comps.
Kind of stuff could really influence the way people are playing the game. And then on the lower end, like your middle rank players, I think are just going to ban whatever they think is most oppressive, which is going to be always like Junkrat.
Yeah, I was going to say Junkrat's getting banned.
It's always going to be like Orisa. It's always going to be Moira.
Zarya.
And yeah, it gives them more control over the game, it feels like. But at the same time, though, I'm not sure if I'm a huge fan of that. But I'm more like open to seeing kind of like what happens.
That's why I think this is a deeper dive discussion. That maybe I should just do a video on it one day, if we ever hear there's going to be more hero bans, or like what are the positives to hero bans, what are the negatives. Like I said, I'm more on the side of like I don't think the game's ready for it yet, but I also love to hear people's thoughts on it, why they like it, etc. It's really fun to hear that stuff. Oh, speaking of that, little side note, if you made it this far in the video, I want to start doing more like reactions to like the YouTube comments we have, maybe some Reddit reacts, etc. So if you have any stuff you want to do, submit it on my Discord. It's super helpful. It allows us to kind of pool everything together. So definitely something I'm going to be adding more to the second channel soon.
Really good point about all the top end players turning it on. It would kind of destroy that community.
You need a better start. You can't know who you're going against.
That's not good.
You can only know the map.
You would be giving the other team a competitive. Like the only thing I could think
you would need to just know the map.
You don't see the enemy team at all at the beginning of the match.
You just know the map.
You're going through the ban phase.
Yeah.
And then you could figure out like, okay, you know what I mean? Like, who's on the other team? Oh, we already banned anyway, so it's whatever.
Yep.
But yeah. I think we don't have a whole ton of time, so I'm gonna start blasting through these. No, I know. I'm doing the same thing. I've been having a great time. I'm so sorry. I've probably been.
By the way, so I remember when I went to I did my interview with Jared a while ago. I don't know how many months ago it was. It was a great discussion. We talked a lot about Overwatch. We had a really deep discussion, and we had a list of a bunch of questions. And it's so hard to get through all of those questions. I think Flats might have had 30 questions prepared. But you just get into such a deep discussion that you would have to have a 1-minute answer to every question to be able to get that done. Because usually you have about an hour to do it, 2 minutes max. There's just so much to talk about that you just miss half the questions. So you try to get the ones that you can look for that are good topics for that, etc. So
talking too much, and it's probably annoyed enough people because we're here to hear your thoughts.
It's a back and forth discussion.
I'm going to jump to this one really quick. Any extra lore potential content, animated shorts like dragons or even bigger?
Just give us a Netflix show.
Oh wow. So we love lore and the story of Overwatch, and we actually I think that
Netflix show
is probably one of the biggest unique selling points of the game is just this universe that we've created. I don't think that there's a lot of other games out there that kind of have an appeal on that same level.
Doesn't League have Arcane though?
So
which has helped a ton.
Would like to do more with it. And
they should do a show.
Kind of always looking for ways to do it.
Easier said than done.
For instance, I guess I don't want to give too many spoilers here, but for instance, I think we've got this pretty cute little unique piece that we're doing for Venture right now.
That's awesome.
It's pretty different than things that we've done before.
Oh, I'm excited for that.
I think that we're starting to experiment with some stuff like that. We're continuing to make some of the other things. We've got some upcoming comics coming out, and then beyond that, on the much bigger side, for an animated short or something like that. I think it's a little too early to talk about concrete details there, but we love making those.
I agree.
Almost just swore on stream. I'm glad I pulled it back at the last second.
almost got him. I agree. I know that it takes tons of resources. I know it's a ton, but genuinely, and I mean this, the animated shorts
are amazing.
Are some of the best stuff in almost, I would say, all of gaming.
They are amazing.
Genuinely, nothing hits like it. And listen, you were there, all right? I'm gonna kind of expose it. Hopefully, I'm either gonna get I'm gonna get a Megan message soon and get in trouble or what. But I don't know if
Megan's
you remember.
Awesome.
Do you remember back 22?
I do want to mention this about and we'll go to Flat's point here. We have occasionally, and we do it about once a year with chat, maybe once every year and a half. We will go back and we will watch all of the shorts and have a watch party. It is so fun. The animated shorts, especially when you watch them in order, are just so well done, and they have such a deep story, which is why people get it's also why people get so disappointed, even not having that extra lore. It feels like it's almost, it's not a missed opportunity because I feel like they eventually might do something like it, but I really do think that Overwatch is by far one of the games that could benefit from a Netflix show. It can be on any platform, right? But it just feels like there's so much there, and even remember they did that little before PvE came out, they had that short animated series that was really cool. I was intrigued by that. And I think it was 22 minutes long. Imagine a season, 10 episodes, 22 minutes. Give us the lore behind these heroes. There's so much about these characters that can be told. And it just feels like my guess is, and we have no idea, maybe they're already working on something like that, right? If I recall correctly, Arcane was just oh, by the way, here's Arcane. No one knew it was happening. So maybe that is happening. Maybe they've been working on it for years and they just can't talk about it. And as much as they would love to, maybe one day we just get one. Who knows? I would love for that, but yeah.
We went to the first ever summit, right? We all flew out.
Yes.
The first one, I don't know if you remember, but honestly, a lot of creators were pretty apprehensive in the beginning. Myself included. We had heard the rumors about heroes behind the battle pass and stuff like that,
which are now free.
Oh no, are we screwed? Is this game are we in trouble? And you guys showed us the Kiriko short.
Oh, I love that one.
The entire atmosphere changed for the rest of the summit. It genuinely brought people to tears.
The Kiriko short was so good.
Right?
I still cry every time I watch that.
Yeah, it was so good.
The Reinhardt short.
I do genuinely think that
the Hanzo Genji one.
What
The Bastion
Overwatch
one.
It's like lifeblood beyond just being a competitive shooter.
They're all so good.
I know there's a ton of work behind it. I'm not going to.
I think the Sojourn one was the last one.
I just want to say, I hope we see more of those.
I agree.
Genuinely, some of your best content that gets put out, and I hope to see more of it.
I do too.
Cool.
Okay, where do we jump to? Any heroes that are struggling that might need a rework of some kind?
Oh, okay. I think I mentioned Wrecking Ball in a director's take,
Yes,
so
Wrecking Ball was
safe,
mentioned as like a rework.
You know that we're
slight
doing
rework.
something with him.
Season 10, right?
You know, so that would be the first one, and that would be the one that would come the soonest.
Season 10.
And then we're looking at 2 DPS heroes right now. I don't
Reaper.
want to give their names, you know, because it's not imminent when these changes would come. So it's like I think like, yeah, when they're ready, they'll come. Hopefully it's sooner rather than later. And I think at least for one of them, he's pretty close.
Okay.
I do want to point something out here.
Throw my hat.
I do want to point something out here. I like the way they go about it now. When it's ready. Remember how like there was such a deep discussion about that Roadhog rework and like people were just ready for it? And everybody's like, okay, they're just like, listen, we're reworking some heroes. When it's ready, it will be ready. We ain't giving you any dates anytime soon.
Hat into the Rhine.
Oh yeah. What do you want?
The Rhine rework.
Oh, here we go again.
Listen, I love the character.
Yeah.
But it just feels like we've fallen behind on the times. And I don't know what would fix it. But
Earth Shatter going through barriers.
That would be awful, but I would love it.
I'm at the point where I'm not even sure if that would do it. That would just make Rhine versus Rhine worse, you know? Like, you know what I mean? But I'm just...
Honestly, not wrong. There's less barriers now.
No pressure.
Okay.
It's painful out here a little bit sometimes. I know it's so different too for like metal ranks versus top level play. Metal ranks, Rhine's really strong, just rolls everybody. But once you get past that like Diamond Masters level, you just
say that's it. Bye. Yeah.
Okay. Next up. Okay. Any chance on speeding up patch cycles from one beginning season, one mid-season to once every 2 weeks? I actually recently went back and watched Siegel's State of Overwatch video from 2020 to remind myself what was good from that time, and that was one of the biggest things that stood out to me. I don't know if you remember that video.
No,
it's a good
classic one.
It's on his channel. It's like 1.5 million views, something like that. Because he had stopped playing the game for multiple years, he came back and it was a pretty glowing review of like why the game feels very good.
Because they changed
a
lot
of the things that stood out to me was the speed of balance, and I agree with what you'd said earlier on how like balance isn't going to be the only content of this game. You need more than that. And I think you have the right vision with like, you know, maybe like some kind of semi-annual big update.
Yep. I like that idea.
But like more frequent patches helps both groups of like really hardcore players who play all the time, because like, are you supposed to be playing the same game for like 80 hours a week? Probably not. Do people do it? Yes.
Yes, I do.
Those people are also probably your most committed and people that are like most invested in your game. And I don't think you should shy away from those people. But at the same time, on the opposite end, most metal rank players probably don't even read much of the patch notes. So like, as long as it's not so shifting where like their entire game is constantly shifting, I think it could be nice to look into. And at that point, I understand if the patches end up being smaller. But my big strife is, like, for example, with Malga, which you guys did a great job, by the way, reverting. And I want to commend that because you guys have been doing that a lot. And I think a lot of people should give you credit for that.
I do want to actually pause there for a second. I think like the idea of having like a new balance patch or a shift every 2 weeks, I think might be a little bit too much. But I think what it needs to be more talked about is the willingness to make aggressive changes within the first couple weeks if something isn't working. So let's say that like season 10 launches, they buff Orisa and Orisa's the must pick, and like everybody's like waiting for season 10 mid-season patch because Orisa is just dominating the game. It comes out of this issue of like, do they wait till mid-season patch? I don't think so. I think you do that. I don't think they need to make a regular cadence of every 2 weeks, but I do think they need to be ready to shift something 2 weeks into a season if it's clearly not as fun for people, or if there's like an issue with some of the heroes that got buffed or aren't strong enough. So I think it's more of like a wait and see on that, but I think the recent Mauga hotfix after 1 week proves they're probably willing to do that now, that they've shifted philosophy.
Walking back patches that maybe don't work out. The problem is, for most people, is they feel like, okay, let's say Orisa becomes meta. and then the next patch comes out and it's not quite enough, you know, and Orisa stays meta or stays played a ton, and it's like, well, I gotta wait another month of this, I'm out, you know what I mean? So with it being faster, I think removes a lot of that potential anxiety of like having to deal with it for so long, but I at least wanted to just present that.
Okay, like we could talk about this for a little bit, and but I'll try to go fast because I guess we don't have that much time left. So with that last comment, it was almost like, hey, we want them fast, but we also want them to be more impactful and like shift the meta more. Like that's what that Orisa comment felt like it was aimed at. But like, so right now, like we definitely plan on 2 like decent sized patches per season. So there's like the one right at the start, and then there's the mid-season patch.
Right.
I think we have been talking about like what it would look like to speed that cadence up. And if you look at like the past few seasons, well, like season 9 is like a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
Like we've done quite a few patches over season 9, and some of them are smaller. But like there are a lot of patches, a lot of seasons where 2 weeks in we'll do some sort of small tweaks.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's actually what you're asking for.
That
like,
should be what
it
is.
2 big ones,
yes.
2 small ones. But that might be the way it would go, and we're looking at like
that's the way you would have to do it.
A moment like towards the end of a season, like, hey, is there a moment towards the end of the season where like with patches, we always want them to like try to make the game better, you know, or at least to address problems in the game or
I hope that
heroes,
patches make
like,
the game better.
If we did it close to the end of a season 2, it's just like a nice moment where like you've kind of run your course. A lot of people are already through the battle pass and stuff like that. And
Just vibing, like, waiting.
I think they're looking for something new. And so I think towards the end of the season, there's definitely an opportunity there for us to start doing more.
I actually really liked what you said about the 2 big ones, 2 small ones. I could get behind that, I think. But...
Ooh, okay.
See, I'm glad. It's funny because we just mentioned that in the discussion right before that, where like, I don't think doing like 4 major patches in a season is the way to do it. You have those in between patches if you need them. Like you don't need to always do them every 2 weeks for like the small patches to like fix any of the stuff. It's just if you need to. If there's an obvious couple heroes that are making it unfun or making the meta like kind of stuck, that's where you do that. So the idea of possibly having that option is a good option.
Yeah.
We're getting like the stamp of approval.
Yeah, I like that. I could get behind that for sure. Because like you guys are trying. Like I'm always open if you guys want to try stuff. Like just try some shit and I'm in. You know, like if I don't like it, I'm like, yeah, I'm not a big fan of that. But then you guys have been walking those back, which is like, what more can you ask for? You know,
they've been doing that, which is good.
Like keep blasting through really, really quick.
Okay.
Have you ever thought about using creator game modes like, for example, Cactus Puppy's Mystery Ults as an arcade game mode? Create daily/hourly rotations of community-made game modes similar in an arcade, similar to like how Apex has time modes.
A little bit. Like it's something we've talked about like ever since custom game and like the arcade was even introduced.
I think there needs to be a major workshop update. I would love that.
Sort of rotation there. This is even before.
Then we can do more fun stuff.
You know, it's like, hey, the like custom games that are popular, maybe we'll start putting them in there. It's never been like I don't think that
it's not top priority.
Ever placed it high enough on the priority side to where it goes above.
It's there if they need
like,
something,
hey,
but it's not.
Like the next big PvP or like competitive feature or something like that we want to put into the game. It's interesting though that you bring it up today because it's like people are asking about it, you know. So maybe there's like more demand or more appeal there than we thought.
I think there's just untapped potential with your creators. You know, like I don't want to go totally down like, you know, like the Fortnite route where Fortnite has tons of people that make game modes. I'm not totally saying that kind of a route.
Oh, I think they should. That's cool.
Fun game modes that I've played that, you know, the creator like
they do a lot in Fortnite with that.
That I think, you know, gamers that just play Overwatch regularly would have a good time with, just to have something new. So just wanted to throw it out there.
That's cool.
Customizable lobby screen / music. Like you can choose which one you want to use.
I like that.
God, we've talked about that a bit too. And like, there's an answer here that's probably too long to go into about like, as you play a game for a long period of time for years, you kind of turn into a power user, you know? And it's almost like, you know, like you want like, hey, I want all the hotkeys and I want the ability to customize as much of it as I possibly can. And I feel like that's sort of where that goes into. And yeah, Overwatch is at a spot now where people have been playing it for like 8 years and they're looking for things like that. we don't really have a plan for that right now, but like it kind of goes into that category of like what are some extra customization options we can add.
It would be like a quality of life patch one day. Yeah.
All right, because I gotta be really selective here. Can you give a hint of maybe what the next big thing you're working on is?
Absolutely not.
Oh man, we've kind of talked about it a bit, which is like what could be another like mid-season beat for competitive and
which is good.
Game. And so that's probably like at least in like any sort of like short or medium term time frame, it's something like that. We do like I think there's an issue here though, which is like it's probably just dangerous for the Overwatch team to talk about really big things coming in a long time frame.
Understandable.
So it's like,
and I want to pause it right there. It's actually a really good point because I think at times they really want to tease stuff, but then like let's say that they come up with this really cool idea they like, right? They go through the process, they get to the point, and then they're like, you know what? We like this, but it just isn't going to work. If they mentioned it in an interview like 6 months prior, and then they get to that point and it doesn't work, and we've seen that with a lot of things. I think they're starting to learn like, let's wait until something's actually ready. Let's wait till it's deep in the pipeline, and then we'll start teasing it. Not like, hey, we think for the midseason beat, this is what we kind of want for like, middle of the year. And then like in a month, they're like, wait, I don't like this. This isn't going to work for Overwatch. Let's change it. But then, you get to July and you don't have anything there, or they do something completely different. Then they're like, wait, where is that? So I think now what they're trying to do is be a little bit more careful with that approach. They want to tease stuff and let people know about things, and they want to hype things up. They also want to keep things like hidden, like for example, like Cowboy Bebop, right? Like no one saw that coming. Next thing you know, we have that, which is great. They want to keep that surprise factor. They also want to, tease really cool things. So I think they just want to make sure that when they actually commit to these things, they want to get it in deeper into the pipeline and in a spot where it's ready to go or close to ready to go, and something they're actually doing, rather than like, oh yeah, we like this for the midseason beat, but then it never comes into fruition. And then you start to have that discussion there. So
I'd rather just like keep things close until a little bit closer to releasing them.
Which I think Aaron just touched on that.
Probably last two questions here. I just want to throw them a bone. Anything for console Zim issues?
Good question. A lot of people ask that question.
Like this, you can screenshot this. This is me like working through the like actually answer this question. The tough thing about this is it's like we know there's an issue here. Okay, so there's an issue in the game, and we need to address that issue. And it's got. I think it might be frustrating for players to like see me dodge answering the question because they're being affected by it and they want to know that like what's going to be happening.
Yeah.
But if we talk about what we would or could potentially do or are doing or anything like that, it's just a way for like a potential people that are looking for exploits, whether it's them or anything else, to start doing something about it. It is a war.
Yeah. I think a lot of people learned about that this week. Fog of War with the Apex stuff. So it's like, it's a really difficult question to answer, but I guess what I'd want players to know is like, yeah, we agree. It's a problem. Okay. I think honestly, I think that's good for them. I know a lot of people want to at least hear something, so I'm glad.
Yeah, at least it like let them know.
Last question before I let you go. I'd keep you here all day if I could.
That would be so fun.
You should have seen the original list of questions I was trying to narrow down. It was like 60. Like it was a lot. It was a lot. There's no way we get through 60 questions in 60 minutes. But the last thing,
I could probably spend the whole 60 minutes on one of them.
Well, I think we both could. Really. Last question for you, and I'm going to combine them together so I get a 2-for-1 deal.
Yes. I like it.
Can we expect to see a roadmap from the year or at least next few months? Or, I know you teased earlier with, dev videos in the future. Is that potentially we should, are we going to see more of you on camera again?
Ooh, so yeah, we'll be doing more dev update videos.
I love those.
And actually,
the last dev update was awesome.
The next one, but we've already got something filmed, and I kind of alluded to it earlier, talking about the streamer mode.
I'm looking forward to that.
And so yeah, we'll have something like that, and I think that this is something that we would like to do. It's hard to promise it. We've got like kind of like one more in the can, and we'll start going from there. But like we're getting, I think each year we're getting a little bit better at getting in front of like our players and talking about what's coming and talking about
their communication
getting to hang with people like you
way better.
So it's great.
I'm glad that I know that you know, I didn't expect for this to happen, but I'm really glad it did. It's been super enjoyable talking to you. I can tell how passionate you are, and you know, a lot of people sometimes don't get it. You know, like they will lump devs together as one thing. You know, be like, oh, they're not fixing Orisa. The devs don't care. Like, dude, you don't understand. Like, if we sat down in a room here, and I was allowed to ask like as many questions as I want, we would be here the entire day. Like, we wouldn't leave. Like, we would just be here the entire day. And it would still keep going. Like, we would still find a way, like, the next day to pick it back up.
Wait, but you didn't even ask about maps at all.
Oh, you're right. I didn't ask about maps. Oh,
that was, like, my thing, yeah.
Do you want to...
Yeah, Aaron Keller made maps. Kings Row. Aaron Keller made Kings Row.
Like, you want to talk about, like...
I brought it up, so it's my fault.
Yeah, you got it.
I like the reworks you're doing.
Yeah, like, so I talked a bit about map reworks in the dev update, and it felt like there was a lot of excitement.
Yes.
At least like
I'm excited
online, you know, so like talking about like we're doing a Colosseo rework. And then I think that like people really responded when I listed out 4 maps that we're looking at right now. We're looking at New Bonnie. You know, and actually with New Bonnie, I've had issues with Nimbani for a long time. One is like that the attacker's spawn room, it's further away from that first point than most maps are.
Ooh,
so you're just at like this disadvantage. And even like having enough shots on goal, you know, to just try to take that first.
Are they saying moving it closer?
But we're looking a lot at that one. We think the high ground there needs a lot of work.
Easier access.
Hopefully we can kind of look at that spawn room right there. I think there's a lot of issues with New Bonnie and some of the other maps of just spawn rooms, right? Where it's just like coming out of that second attacker spawn room.
Oh, it's so small.
It can just be brutal.
Either way, it can be brutal.
Like, it is so tough.
Making an easier way to get out of there.
We're looking at a lot of issues like, that with that map and with other maps. I'd always had an issue with New Bonnie that it only has 2 defender spawn room, and most maps have 3, but Kings Row only has 2 also, and so it's just like
Aaron made Kings Row,
and I think that they actually kind of like that the payload moves pretty quickly through that second area, and one of the reasons it does is there's no spawn room there, you know, so it's like I think we probably had a little bit of a misunderstanding on what the pacing of a match ought to be like in Kings Row and New Bonnie. Even though there's a lot of issues with New Bonnie, they might have gotten it right in some respects, you know, compared to some of our other maps. So let's say we've talked about, some of the other ones talked about. We talked about like Circuit Royale, same thing, like that coming out of that. Even like it's just a map
tough map
coming out of your first spawn
True.
It's pretty brutal. Just coming out of that thing and getting around that first corner is way harder than it.
And I want to point something out, by the way. I've watched enough spectators now where I actually see what they're talking about. You don't see that first spawn area as much in top 500, but in most of the spectators I've watched, people get stuck right at the beginning of Circuit Royale. Not even like where you see it happen in top 500 games, they get stuck right at spawn. So addressing changes in that would be really good for Circuit Royale.
It ought to be. We're looking at that. We're even we've made changes to that second attacker spawn room already, but then there's like that hill, you know, like that hill is
second point. It's a journey.
And you know what's crazy about it too is as we've been looking at it, when you first start going up that hill, it's not even a 90-degree corner. You're taking more than a 90-degree left turn, and like you're just getting shot in the back.
Yeah, know? It's tough.
We're like trying to push that hill.
They got a good widow. It's over.
So hard. Yeah. So we're looking at that. We're looking at Havana too. Same thing with some of the Havana issues.
Sight lines.
First attacker spawn room can be tough.
Yeah.
The third one is just
the sight lines on third are awful.
Like getting out of that spawn room, and then that widow perch at the castle.
It's awful.
So good. I don't think we'll get rid of that widow perch, but I think it's
easier cover.
We'll probably nerf it. Yeah. You know.
Yeah.
Good to hear. At some of the sight lines, some of the routes in that first area also. And then what was the fourth one? Dorado. Oh yeah, we mentioned Dorado.
Dorado. Yeah. Personally, I'm a big Dorado hater, so love that.
You're the worst.
What?
Just kidding. No, it was my map. So like
Aaron made Dorado.
Hang on. You made Dorado and Kings Row?
Yeah, we only had 2 level designers.
What? So, like, how does the duality of that work? That's like the best map and the worst map.
Oh my god.
I'm sorry, dude.
You just didn't do that.
I love that Flats did that, though, because King's Row is, like, one of the most favorite maps in, like, the game. And then you have Dorado, where, like, Dorado is such a struggle. So I'm really glad that, like, he brings that up, because Dorado's second point is the worst. Not the worst, but like Dorado's second point is like, it's such you have to spend too much time trying to get to a high ground that takes 4 minutes. Nobody wants to do that. So you end up just doing the same thing over and over again.
So I'm like, okay. And like, I have like a 2.0 GPA at this point.
I see. Is there another one in there? Maybe we can find a middle one.
I'm too scared to tell you right now. To be honest.
Trust me, it doesn't get lower than Dorado. We can only go up from here.
Okay. Oasis.
Oh, Oasis is
isn't bad.
like Oasis.
I don't mind Oasis.
Well, actually,
pass a grade.
Only did 2 of the points on Oasis. We had another
Which one?
designer.
Oh.
Work on one of them.
So
then like Dorado, yeah, we're gonna look at a bunch on Dorado. Same thing. Like the initial spawn room can be tough. Like that area around the courthouse, I think everybody else calls it the church, you know. Like,
second point.
It's a really tough spot in that map. And so we're kind of looking at, we've had some crazy ideas there that I don't think we're going to keep, like a jump pad.
I don't think a jump pad would be, it sounds fun, but
we're looking at redoing a lot of that stuff.
That's good to hear.
And also like, I think that sometimes our flanking routes get a little bit too long. So we're trying to figure out, especially on Dorado, just like
second point,
how we can rein some of that stuff in.
It takes like an hour and a half.
Useful.
Yeah, getting up to second on attack is real tough.
Yeah, it's a journey.
But, you know, maybe someday we can, you know, vote to ban or vote to pick maps. Who knows? Yeah, maybe.
Oh. I love how you snuck another question in there with like a comment.
Why are you calling me out, dude? Like they're gonna, if you just rolled with it, they wouldn't have noticed.
Nice try.
Now I got the flats and all caps from Megan. Now I'm in trouble. Nah, thanks, dude. We're 10 minutes over. Okay, I won't ask anymore. I won't ask no more. Okay,
We're
promise.
Calling it.
I promise.
It's a great interview. I love it.
Do we still get an answer to that one question though, or?
We're still looking at that. Like, it's not actually on a schedule, but like, I think, okay, I'll just talk about it a little bit. We like the way it would
baited him into another question.
UQ for a game. Once it found a match, we'd probably bring up like vote on one of like these 3 or something like that maps, you know?
Yeah. That's kind of like what I think like a few games
great because like it does allow players to have a little bit more control over their experience. We are worried that if
some maps won't be played,
try to vote a map out and it still gets selected and it's a map they hate, that might be that moment where they're just like
they leave.
You know, and
Understandable.
It will give us a lot of data on our most popular and least popular maps, which for us would be really great to have. And I think if we were to do it,
maybe add it to quick play.
It would only be a quick play feature.
I was gonna say, add it to like quick play hacked or something,
like
right?
Some worries about introducing it into comp.
Yeah,
that'd be a good. I don't know like what people's thoughts are on that, but that's like a good usage of like the quick play hacked. Keep everything the same rule set. Add like a map selection into the quick play hacked, and see how people feel about map selections. There you go. Now you have a quick play hacked where people aren't like as mad that they can't play the quick play they enjoy. But at the same time, you have a new feature like, oh, let's see what maps are the best. Okay, these are the most popular maps. These are the least popular maps. So they have a way that quick play hack could actually kind of be incorporated into that and actually add some really cool dynamics rather than just like changing a bunch of rules. So
it's like we just have to be a little bit careful with it.
Definitely quick play first. I think you're.
I agree.
You don't have to be told that. You're smart. You know this stuff. You've been killing it this year.
Thank you.
Yeah, I got you. All right, though. I'm gonna get in so much trouble. I gotta wrap this up. Aaron, thank you so much for doing this. Seriously, I appreciate it a ton. I hope chat and everyone else watching appreciates this as well. You know, I never thought we'd see the day where we have Overwatch's game director coming in and talking to, you know, one of the creators about the game. And you know, we got to talk about so many different things, like not just like, oh, like what about like balance numbers, like philosophical, like how do you view the game's future,
which is
like
always
where do you
good to
wanna
hear.
go? And I truly appreciate that a ton. Because yeah, obviously we can sit here and argue about like, does Roadhog deserve 50% healing reduction on his breather? No. But like, like we could sit here all day long and argue about that stuff. But honestly, I think bigger picture is a lot more valuable. So I just want to say thank you, chat. Can you say thank you as well? Appreciate it. Hope to see you do more of these. Hopefully, maybe I'm asking for a little bit much. Hopefully, I get to have you on again, and I hope you had fun because this was a blast.
Dude, I loved it, and I've been excited for this, because it's just great to be able to talk about some of this stuff, you know. But also, I love having you in our community. I watch your stuff, you know. You're just a good person, you know. Thanks. And so it's how could I say no to an opportunity to be able to jump on with you?
I appreciate that a ton.
You know.
Thank you. That means a lot to me. I hope you know that.
Oh, I'm blushing.
Yeah, me too.
This is great.
All right, I'm gonna get yelled at. I'm gonna let you go. Thank you again. Have a good rest of your day. Hopefully, they give you the day off for me grilling you for the last hour.
I don't think that's gonna happen. He's going to a meeting.
My 3 o'clock. Actually.
Yeah, I was gonna say he already has a meeting.
All right, see you later. Sorry, bye.
Don't worry about it.
Oh man.
See you later.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
But yeah, honestly, I hope you enjoy the kind of the style we had here. I recorded this off stream, which, like I said, is pretty rare for me. But that was really cool. Let me know what you think about the dev stream. If you made it this far, make sure to like the video, leave a comment, sub to the YouTube, all that stuff. It's really cool to have Aaron come on there and you kind of see that it's good to have those questions on there. We learned a lot, and I'm definitely very optimistic about where the game is headed. So hopefully we can continue to see them build off that blueprint and all of that. And yeah, let me know some things you might have wanted to see question-wise, all that stuff in the comments. And thank you, everybody, for watching. Seriously, I appreciate y'all a ton, and it's been awesome. Hope you all have an amazing day/night.